All right. Welcome back, everybody. This is another map walkthrough with Jeff here from Morvold Press. And this is a Kobold layer that I have named Murkdern. I always feel like places need a name to give them some personality. And the map is basically released with this core map that we're going to go through, as well as some art for a deep dragon that the Kobold's called Murkdrin, and a token for that dragon, as well as a character sheet for it. And so I'm going to show those, but mostly talk about the map, kind of inspiration, some ideas, the flow of the map, ways that I would potentially use it, so that you might get some ideas. So we'll just jump straight into the map here. So this obviously is a kind of subterranean cave-like map. I enjoy these kinds of maps, especially when I can at least hint at a tiny bit of a difference here with the entrance to the cave or tunnels that lead into the map. I always like having that contrast because it's nice to see kind of that bright green and green trees go into that much earthier, darker, more somber tones. So for this one, I think this came along really nicely. I do like to put this. You can certainly omit this if you want to, or just kind of start the characters here. If you don't have it, in your homebrew or your campaign, don't have it entering through some outdoor area. But certainly it's possible here, and you can play through a little bit of the entry for your characters if you wish. So basically, we've got a cavern kind of twisting into the main of the map. The first chamber that we reach here is basically a little guard station. So I've got a table here with some candles and some weapons and shields. I've got some crates and barrels that have been stacked against the wall, figuring that these are maybe goods that they have stolen, or that they found, or that they robbed people of out on the highway, or some nature that they bring that back to the cave. So they could be filled with literally anything. It could also just be food stores. It could be a variety of things, whatever you might want it to be. But they kind of amass it here as they come in. They drop it off before they move through the rest of the cavern. I figured since kobolds are dragon worshipping culture, that this cave might have, one of the reasons maybe why they chose this cave was because there might have been remnants of dragons here. So I did put some dragon bones and spines intermixed among the rocks, which might have been assigned to them to go ahead and occupy these caves. And these caves could have been naturally formed, or they certainly could have been mining and digging their way through. We do have kind of some mine areas of the cave where that's reinforced, but certainly could be whatever you want. So we can move through here just to give you an idea of scale. I would play this map, and I've designed this map to be 120 by 120, so about 600 feet by 600 feet. So these are some pretty big areas, good areas to have a fight, plenty of room for social encounters, plenty of room for maneuvering, lots of clutter, lots of potential things to hide behind, things to block line of sight. If we get a light here, we can kind of see these aren't that way, but certain of these, like large spires or whatnot, will block line of sight. Oh, maybe if I turn shadows on, that'll help. So yes, okay, there we go. So we can see that these are currently walled off, and so they will block line of sight and light as well. So they move through this chamber, the idea being that they can go kind of one of two ways. Obviously, at this first, we have a little choke, a little guard table, and a little stand where they can kind of easily fend off, form a little bottleneck with some guards and force people into that. Well, maybe they have some archer fire coming from up here. Again, it's just a great place to potentially have some social encounters. You could potentially try to distract these guards off a direction and then sneak in. There's a variety of things you could do. There's another one similar down here before we move into the main cavern. But we'll go ahead and explore kind of this northwestern area first. So here, I basically would have had them like tunneling and digging as they made their way through this network of caves. So I think I've talked in a previous video about how I think it's important to have multiple avenues to a single location. So it's not a linear system. So if people come here and maybe there's a patrol, so you want to go this way to dodge the patrol, or you want to go down this way or go all the way around. I think it's nice that you have multiple ways in, multiple ways out. It can save your party if things go bad. It can threaten your party if things are going too good. It just gives you a lot of tools to help the flow encounter, whether it's social or otherwise. So as we kind of go through, so this is really just just a space for the players to navigate. There might be some traps in here. Kobolds certainly love their traps, so it would stand to reason that they would have led these unguarded hallways full of some traps that they know about and can obviously circumvent, letting people like yourselves have all the problems with them and alert them to your presence. So anyway, as we move through and eventually get to the next chamber, this chamber I kind of had designed for a couple things. You'll see this big hole in the ground, and that'll be more clear once I show the other ones. But basically, the idea is that they worship a deep dragon named Murkdrin, and Murkdrin moves through these giant holes down into the Underdark. So there are 3 locations in Murkdern that have these holes where she could come up. I think it's interesting and important for creatures to have a way in and out. They don't necessarily, it's not easy to corner them. Certainly, I think we've all had those those experiences as the villain, teleports away or flies away or gets away, and it makes it interesting when you encounter them again. And for someone as old as an adult large dragon, you would think that they'd have planned ahead. So there's 3 of these in the thing. One of them is the main one, and we'll see that here in a second. Another feature of this cavern is we have this nice, kind of like steaming hot pool. I figured these would kind of basically be like hot springs that basically get a lot of warm steam coming off. They could be used for bathing, could be used for cleaning, could be used as a water source if you didn't want them to be a hot spring. And then they basically feed heat into this room along with these fire cauldrons here. And you can kind of see we've got some more of the dragon spines skeleton, but inside the dragon spines, you can kind of see we've got a bunch of eggs. And so I was figuring we could use these as kobold eggs. If you wanted to, you could use those as potential dragon eggs or other types of reptilian eggs that maybe the party needs to get or destroy or steal, whatever the case might be. In my mind, this was just a place where they would maybe birth their young. So maybe they even like get the eggs ready, and then when they're ready to hatch, they could bring them to the pool and birth them in the water, whatever the case might be. I just thought it was kind of a fun aesthetic and a neat purpose for the room itself. So again, as you can see, lots of ways in, lots of ways out. It's a non-linear system. As we move down, I've got a few of these little patches here. For me, I didn't feel like kobolds would necessarily have a bathroom, right? Not in the way that we think of it. So I kind of figured they'd have these little midden heaps, little patches of straw where they might come and use these, or several of these kind of sprinkled throughout the tunnels. So they might come and use these, and then at some point in time, some unlucky fellow who drew the short stick would have to shovel that away and carry that somewhere, maybe down in the holes, but they'd get eaten by the dragon. As you continue southward, this comes down into kind of a little section here, southern part of the cave system. And we've got a little cell. So I figured that the kobolds may bring sacrifices or may capture a party, something of that nature. And I always like there being kind of a holding area for a given town, a village, even if it's a human non-player character, non-human, potentially antagonistic group. I still think it provides a lot of area for stories. You could be trying to rescue a prisoner. You guys could become prisoners. You have to break out of the prison. So we have basically this little prison area here. Where we got a little place to sit and some bunks to sleep on, and kobolds have generously provided you with a bathroom. And then over here we've got kind of a fancy looking spinning cage where maybe you get put in there to be feasted upon by the dragon. Hopefully not, but it's there if you want to have a little fun. Maybe get the tension going. And then kind of to the south of that, this is the hole I was talking about, the one that I think I had the dragon in my mind coming out the most. So we've kind of this like littered bones strewn about here. That could be from when she brings kills to eat here. It could be things they've brought for her to eat that just never happened. And they just kind of like are there. They don't want to touch them because they're sacrifices. But they kind of ringed this particular hole with a bunch of candles and are often hopeful that she will return. And in my mind, she comes here, she's vain. She enjoys their worship. And they bring her all kinds of treasures and offerings and tributes and whatnot. So it's not a bad life to be a dragon worshipped by a bunch of kobolds. Down a little bit this way, we have the only kind of walled structure in this whole cavern. I kind of wanted to put something down here that could potentially be used by maybe a human or a non-kobold, but it could also certainly be a kobold shaman or something of that nature. We've got a little table with a bunch of herbs that they could have collected from outdoors, so we could have some kind of alchemical or herbalistic endeavors going on here. Certainly a lot of books on the shelves, and a little area to do some work, and we got the all important chest to put the item that the party might be after. I also kind of put down this little magic circle with kind of like this dragon skull in it, figuring that could be kind of an integral or interesting thing to use if you wanted to have them. Maybe it has some power over the dragon. Maybe it has a way to summon the dragon. Maybe it will tell you things about the dragon. Who knows? I like putting things like that in there so that you, the DM, can kind of take it and use it as you wish. Maybe it's just a decoration. So it's easy to hand wave it away, but it's also easy to use it for something useful for your particular party and campaign and story. So as we continue on and trundle through the tunnel, we'll get to another hot springs being fed here. And then we also have kind of a very large fungus population. You can kind of see the size of the fungus in relation to one of these little wheelbarrows. This is where they get some of their food. So when they, can't hunt and can't forage and the stolen food runs out, they certainly have fungus to be able to come in and make a big soup. We'll see that here in just a little bit. Nice pool. Again, they could be, bathing, they could be swimming. There's a lot of purposes for the two water sources. One could be drinking, one could be bathing. There's a variety of ways that you could set it up. Water is also a great thing to house creatures. It's a great place to have interesting encounters because you've got an additional challenge of the water being underwater. Tentacle monsters are always great. So then we continue up this way through the cavern, and we get to the southern part of the eastern chamber. And this is the one that I had put in some mining elements. Obviously, when we think of kobolds, I think we think of dragon worshiping. I think we think of candles on their heads. I think we think, thanks, WoW. I think we think of dining, digging and mining and dirt. So I think that in this case, I wanted to put some mines. And obviously you have some cars that have some ore. I figure they go down digging into the depths of the earth, looking for jewels, looking for rare stones, looking for minerals, looking for treasure, looking for anything they might be able to offer to their goddess. And as we kind of scroll our way up, we have more of those bones, and then another hole. So that is another location the dragon could potentially come up if you're running a sort of a dragon encounter on this map. We also have a little forge here. I figured, kobolds certainly, they're not, technically advanced, but I think they certainly would have mastered some amount of metalsmithing and forge ready activities. So I thought we'd go ahead and give this group at least something like that, so they could be making tools, working on things for the dragon, and just fixing things around the area. There's a couple more mines that are kind of disappearing into the earth. In my mind, you see these don't really go anywhere, but in my mind, they're going down. So this would be leading to another map potentially. So these three big holes, as well as these mine shafts, could potentially lead to a secondary map of this map. And then we have another little heap here that could be used. And then we move kind of into the middle. The middle is the living area for the kobolds. And so whenever I'd thought about kobolds and read about kobolds, it was kind of always hinted at or stated directly that they were, overcrowding was an issue, that they would kind of tightly pack into their area. So I wanted to kind of represent that. It's always interesting picking a culture that is, humanoid, but picking elements that make it seem a little different from us or from our norm. They're not living in a house. They're not living in, they don't have a typical bed. And in this case, I wanted that to represent that through a bunch of wooden scaffolding. So as you can see, we have, it's kind of raised up off the ground. We have all these ladder systems that are going up to these various levels. So there's different levels of ladder scaffolding, and then sprinkled amongst all the scaffolding are basically these beds that the kobolds have taken. There could be more, but I didn't want to go too crazy. I think in total, as we go through, and all these are connected with bridges, so you can move from one end all the way around to the other through all these bridges. So they're all interconnected. I think when I counted, there were 80 beds. So if they have a unique bed, then you're looking at potentially a clutch, if you will, of 100 kobolds. If they share beds, then it could be as many as 200 or 300 kobolds. In the middle, I thought there would probably need to be or should be some kind of big central leadership oriented thing. So I thought, what better than a gigantic dragon head skull with a throne on top and a nice comfy pillow for your resident kobold leader to be doing what kobold leaders do. And then they've got this little like terrace that they have their own personal home in. So they've got their bed and some food, hoarded food, looks delicious. They've got some their chest and then a little table. Maybe they're one of those rare reading kobolds that actually is doing some studying, and that's why they make the big bucks ruling the kobold land. But probably they just think of how can I please the goddess so I can maintain my power. So then I mentioned the little stations here. So this is one of two stations where we've kind of got, some collected fungus. We've got mushrooms. We've got some stored mushrooms, perhaps, or some other seasonings. We've got a big pot that's on. We've got a bunch of bowls that's available. So, and this and another one to the north of the central living area here. We're kind of two areas where they would feed folks and these stations where they could come and eat. And again, this is if they're not eating, food represented elsewhere outside of the map. So these were just kind of options that I wanted to give them. So in the whole, I think you get a lot of potential usage out of the map in terms of how would you want to use this map. I think there's a handful of ways to do that. One, when I make a map that's around a civilization, like a living place, I always want it to make sense and feel like things actually live here, and they walk around and they do things, and they're going about their day-to-day business. It's not just a place to have combat. I also want it to be a place where you don't necessarily have to have a fight. You might come here and intimidate the kobolds, and you want to come in and have a social encounter. Maybe you're asking their permission to get something they have. Maybe you need to go down to their mines, or they have access to a resource you need, or they've stolen an artifact you have to recover. If they've taken a prisoner you need to get, and you don't necessarily need to fight your way through 300 kobolds. I do enjoy having to challenge parties that get a little bit punch drunk on their own power and think they can just fight through anything. And when you throw, a few hundred of anything at them, pretty soon it shows them they are mortal and they may have to use that diplomacy skill after all. So that would be kind of the plan. If you could certainly have a combat encounter, you could have them try to stealth their way in. They could be disguised. They could fight their way in over through the northwest section. Where there's a lot less kobolds, maybe just encounter a few patrols, sneak their way through this chamber, and then maybe sneak their way down into here or down through here, rescue a prisoner and make their way back out. There's lots of ways to move through the space. So it could be a combat encounter, it could be a social encounter, it could be a quest location where you need to go and pick up something, find an artifact, find a resource. Maybe this person, whoever it is, has a book you need, has a special herb they need, has something in that chest you need. Oh, they do. You got to get something in there. And basically you've got, a variety of options for how to use a place like this. So in addition to the map and this release on Patreon, I was just going to share a couple of other things that we were including. So one is this just piece of artwork. It was of a deep dragon. Again, Merkdrin is what we are calling her. And I really enjoyed that piece that someone had done. So we made a little token. So if Merkdrin shows up while the party is there, you can have them moving around the map. Again, it's 120 by 120. So when you get a grid over that, it's a pretty big map in terms of things moving around. Lots of space to potentially use. And then finally, we also created a sheet here, character sheet for Merkdrin, and kind of wrote a little background, offered some description and some personality traits if you wanted to use those, and obviously gave them a stat block. So just something kind of to flavor the experience. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoy the thought process behind these maps. If you want this map, I'm putting this up on Reddit. And so you could go ahead and grab that if you like these maps and you want to get all those extra things and support me in making more maps. Please do feel free to come to Morvold Press Patreon, and lots of options for as little as $2 a month to get all the maps that I produce. Thanks. Have a great day.